What's up, everybody? So, I wanted to talk about Shadow Priest and just how they fit into Season of Discovery right now. So, Sarthe put out a video talking about like a tier list, just ranking classes against each other. And surprisingly, he put Shadow Priest at the tippy top of that list. So, I wanted to talk about this. This is not, I have nothing prepared for what I want to say here. This is just going to be the ramblings of a crazy old Shadow Priest. And I just want to talk about Shadow Priest being at the top of that list, SOD rating, and how I think it all fits together. Because I do agree with him in some capacity. Shadow Priest has a ton of utility. It doesn't come in the form of raw damage, but they have so many debuffs and buffs that they can apply to the target and your raid that they are like a full-fledged utility class that does damage as well. And I think there's value in that, but I also think that Season of Discovery doesn't allow that value to be fully utilized. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about Shadow Priest in a nutshell. What buffs do they provide? Why did Sarthe rank them so high? Well, they have a ton of healing from Vampiric Embrace that can do them as much, if not more, than healers on some fights, depending on the raid. They bring a ton of debuffs in the form of Homunculi, Eye of the Void, Shadow Weaving. They buff, like, it doesn't matter what class you're playing. It's almost certainly, you're almost certainly playing a class that is going to have their damage buffed by a Shadow Priest in some way in your raid. Shadow Priests also have just about infinite mana in a fight. So when fights are long and hard and they're lasting 10 minutes like Sunken Temple did at the very beginning before all the nerfs, Shadow Priest is an amazing class to have. They have Dispersion to return mana. They have Shadow Fiend to return mana. They have 50% reduced cost of shadow spells in shadow form. So there's a lot going on for Shadow Priest that makes it really good. That's not their damage. Their damage is really, really bad. If you look at their damage on Warcraft logs, which according to Agrind doesn't matter, and we'll get to that in a second, then you will see that Shadow is just right there sitting above Frost Mage and Arcane Mage, the two most formidable DPS specs in all of World of Warcraft. So there is a problem when it comes to Shadow's DPS, but the idea is that that can be offset by the buffs that they provide in return. Makes sense, right? Like, not every class needs to be balanced the same if the classes that are at the lower end of the DPS spectrum bring other things that make them valuable. I think that is incredible class design. I really do. I think it makes classes feel unique and different and provide different value to a raid. Now, here's the problem with Season of Discovery. The devs have said it themselves. They thought Sunken Temple was too hard, which, sure, I agree that for a classic environment, the original state of that raid was too difficult. But that difficulty is what allowed Shadow Priest to really flourish. It was the first time that I felt incredibly powerful as a Shadow Priest, not because of my damage, but because of everything I was doing to help support my raid. Now, the problem is that Agrind has said in Twitter that he doesn't think that Season of Discovery should have raids that are that difficult. They shouldn't, require hours and hours of progression. Like, the average dad guild should be able to show up, have a few beers with their friends, and clear the raid in an hour or two without really worrying about mechanics. In that environment, if that's what the raids are going to be in Season of Discovery, then you don't care about anything other than damage, because utility doesn't matter if the bosses aren't doing anything anyway. The utility is there to help offset difficulty in a raid encounter. But if that utility isn't needed, it might as well not exist. All you care about is damage at that point. You just want as many mages, warriors, warlocks, rogues. I don't know what the DPS meta is right now. You want all the classes that bring damage and don't care about anybody else. Now, you maybe want one Shadow Priest because they do bring a lot of debuffs for the target, that maybe because of the fact that all those debuffs can be centered in one character, you don't lose as much damage by trying to bring each of those classes to provide those debuffs. But you're not bringing the Shadow Priest because of damage, and when fights are easy, damage is the only thing that matters. Now, the devs, I'm sure, do not see it that way. They probably think it's a mindset thing, right? WoW players, you can clear the raid with any class, right? So play what you want, have fun, don't worry about your damage. But that's not how people think when you can compare yourself to others. People always do. And it's not just the top players in the world. Everybody wants to play something that's strong and powerful. That's what makes games fun in general. Like, a lot of people enjoy the gearing up process and the getting stronger process, but what they really enjoy is just dominating other people and classes and other things. So when you don't have that domination, when you don't have that sense of being powerful, the game just isn't as fun. It's really true for a lot of people. Now, maybe not everybody. Like, there are people like me who will play Shadow Priest in any version of the game just because I'm a masochist who enjoys playing Shadow. I can't help it. I just really do. But not everybody is that way. A lot of people might want to play Shadow, but they're like, oh, that class is shit, so I'm going to play something else because they take a look at Warcraft logs. Now, if Agrand is real and he really doesn't think that Warcraft logs matters, then they will design fights that make sure that Warcraft logs doesn't matter. They will design fights that allow for the utility of classes to really shine because they are designing these classes, right? They're giving them this utility. So they might as well be making classes that allow that utility to really shine, because if they don't, then nobody gives a shit how many buffs or debuffs you give to Shadow Priest, because people aren't going to be playing it because they're going to be playing a warrior that does double the damage. So that's something that I wanted to say, where yes, Shadow Priest has a lot going for it, and Sunken Temple Prog was the most fun I've had in Season of Discovery, bar none. And I know that that difficulty of raiding is not for everybody, but it is something that really allows a class like Shadow Priest to shine to the fullest extent, because you have these encounters that are extremely long, extremely hard. You're trying to min-max your mana, the healing to your group, dispels, debuffs on the target, and Shadow Priest does a lot of that. But when you don't need any of that, you just care about how much DPS you're doing to the boss, and well, guess what? Shadow doesn't do a whole hell of a lot. Obviously, none of this has anything to do with PvP, so don't give me a comment like, oh, well, they can dot you into globals and then you die in 15 seconds. I don't care. That's not what we're talking about. This is entirely a PvE context. When it comes to utility, as I said, if it's not needed, then it's just wasted. I really think that the developers need to think about how can classes replace their utility. Like, I think an idea for a rune that would be really good for Shadow Priest would be increases your damage by 20%, but reduces the healing of Vampiric Embrace by 75%. This allows them to compete more directly with other DPS classes and takes away one of their biggest utility buttons. Now, yeah, they'll still provide some healing, but it's not going to be anywhere to the degree that it is if you were not to have that rune. So you basically have the trade-off. Do you want more group healing through Vampiric Embrace, or do you want more personal damage? I think at least if they do something like that, it allows people to pick and choose what kind of Shadow Priest they want to play. But right now, if you're picking Shadow Priest, you're just kind of stuck with, hey, you have great utility, so hopefully your group needs it, because if they don't, then your damage is just going to suck and you're going to feel bad about it. Anyway, I think that's all I wanted to say. Sorry, I was probably a bit rambly because I didn't really have anything written. This is all stream of consciousness. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you agree or if I'm just a grumpy old man shouting, get off my lawn. Anyway, have a good one. My name is Fanspace, and I'll see you in the next video.